Okay, well, we need to have a conversation. Now, product placement in film has existed for decades, and in this video, I'm going to give you a couple of examples as to where you'll actually see products in films that actually help with the budgets. Now, there's a small director that you guys might know who's Steven Spielberg, and he directed the film E.T. in the 1980s, and some of you that might be a very old movie, but I still remember it. Now, in order to help fund that project, something that was a bit novel back then was using product placement in movies in order to add some more money to make the production better. Now, in efforts to do this, Steven Spielberg reached out to M&M's, which is a commonly known candy that everybody knows, and they unfortunately said no. Now, instead of taking this rejection and not reaching out to any other companies, Steven Spielberg reached out to Reese's, and that's where you're actually going to get the scene where the child gives E.T. Reese's Pieces in that movie, which created the earliest example of product placement in movies that at least I remember. Now, Steven Spielberg did the same thing in a small movie called Back to the Future, where initially he had reached out for Ford for the exact same reason. In order to get a bit of money for the production, they added some product placement in order to make your kind of first brand deal. Ford also said no, which is kind of a happy accident because that's where we got the famous scene when the DeLorean came out in Back to the Future. And I'm sure even today Ford is kicking themselves for actually denying that collab. Now, those are two examples from movies that are back in the 1980s and maybe things you actually haven't seen before. Now, one of my favorite shows is Top Boy on Netflix, and in season 4, a character who had not one workout scene through the entire season, at one point during the season actually started walking out completely decked out in Gymshark and working out. Now, not only is it my favorite show and it's kind of close to home, but also I had worked with that same company all of 2022. So knowing when I see those products on my favorite Netflix TV show, it definitely isn't an accident. It's another situation where product placement is going to be in a film in order to help fund the project because it satisfies both companies. The production itself gets a bit of money to make the production better, and obviously it's going to sell a lot of Gymshark clothing to people because people outside of the gym world are watching Top Boy. At least I think so. Now, this is another example of product placement or displacement, for example. This also might ruin movies for you, so proceed with caution. Now, Apple, the company that makes a whole bunch of devices, actually bars filmmakers from letting their villains use their products. So if you think you're going to see the Green Goblin using the new iPhone 15 or Cruella de Vil on her new MacBook, you're actually not going to see that. Apple as a brand doesn't want to see bad guys in movies using their stuff, which kind of gives Android a leg up, but at the same time it creates a little bit of a problem because in movies that are kind of like a whodunit, like Knives Out, well, you actually know exactly who it is if you just pay attention to the phone that they're using. But that's an example of companies actually having an influence on filmmaking in terms of which products can be placed there or which one can't at all. Then you also have films that are exclusively based on product placement. If you ever heard of a movie called Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle, White Castle's an actual restaurant that existed before that movie, and I'm sure it helped the bottom line of White Castle as a company when that movie was released. And that's not the only time where restaurants have been involved in film and television. In fact, Game of Thrones had a big leg up having product placement with a Starbucks cup on set. Although that was kind of a mistake, but I don't think Starbucks minded that much. Now, in today's television and cinema, you now have products that just function as 3-hour commercials. You have the Lego Movie, which take a guess on what they're promoting there. You have Barbie, you also have Transformers, and you also have the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, one of the biggest franchises in film right now. And if you think that they're just making the movie to make the movie and not selling toys and video games and different merchandise, well, then you might need a little bit more re-education. Product placement and filmmaking have kind of gone hand in hand for a long time now, and I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. But there is one little problem when I'm giving all of this information as you're nodding your head being like, hey, I might have not known that. Every time you watch a video here on YouTube and you see the little thing that says pay promotion, or someone tells you that this video is sponsored by Squarespace, it causes a little bit of cringe and if not a visceral negative response to whoever is promoting a certain project in their videos, which kind of introduces a double standard because it's kind of the same as having product placement in movies and television. Now, over the last year or so, I've been taking this YouTube channel a little bit more seriously, and with that you have things like dedicated videos and paid promotions in the middle of videos that are only about 30 to 60 seconds long. Now, on one end, we applaud filmmakers for making the creations that they do, even if there's product placement that's blatant or even if it's hidden under the surface. However, even when it's disclosed, we still have a negative reaction to whenever content creators have paid advertisement or product placement in their videos, which kind of introduces a double standard because I'm not exactly sure what makes the two of those things different. Now, understandably, trust of that creator might come into question whenever there's a paid video or there's some inkling that money is involved as the reason why they're making the content that they are. But I think that comes from two different things. One, I'm fully aware that there might be a parasocial relationship between the audience that's watching my videos and myself. A lot more of you know who I am than I know of you. And putting out as much content as I have and other creators doing the same, I think there's a notion of people thinking that they know people a lot better because they see them on a regular basis, which might not be exactly true, but also isn't the worst and most outlandish thing in the world either. Now, coming with that parasocial relationship and thinking that you know a person might actually come into question about trust when somebody's talking about a product that might be paid for by a brand. Now, I can understand where both of those things come from, but I also want to introduce that maybe the way that some people think that brand deals work isn't actually the way that they actually work. For example, the vast majority of reviews that you might see on YouTube might actually come from things that people bought themselves. And the ones that are from the bigger creators that might get on embargo deals, sometimes those aren't paid either. A lot of the times you might get something to borrow for a couple of weeks, you get to tell your audience about it, but no money actually exchanges hands most of the time. Now, you can take my word for it, but that's just coming from the inside, knowing a lot of creators that are much bigger than myself. And that also might relate more to the camera bodies from major companies, but there are other products that are obviously going to be paid reviews. Now, piggybacking off the fact that there are going to be exchanges where people are going to get product and get paid to actually review it and tell their audience about it, all of that has to be disclosed at the beginning of a video. In fact, in your YouTube backend, when you're posting a video, you actually have to disclose if there's going to be a paid promotion. And if you don't, you actually run the risk of getting into a lot of trouble. And if not, you might actually lose your channel. Now, that being said, if you see something from your favorite creator advertising a product, if you don't hear that disclosure or you don't see that paid promotion tab at the beginning of a video, it might be something that they actually bought with their own money, or they're just running the risk of losing everything, which I don't think anybody does on purpose. Now, there's also one other thing I want to talk about, at least from my experience, and it's the fact that, there's not really an incentive for me to lie to you, or at least do it knowingly. So for example, if I decide to tell you a spec on the Sony FX30 and it doesn't actually tend to be that the way that it is as the way that I said it, well, obviously you're gonna come to the comment section and be disgruntled, but at the same time, your trust for my channel and any other information that I have is also going to go down the drain, which means that I have to give you the most information that I can based on my experience. And if I knowingly lie about it, then I'm only putting myself at risk of actually destroying the thing that I built in the first place. And I don't know if you guys know about this, but getting affiliate marketing money isn't the most amount of money in the world. And for me to risk my reputation in lying to you knowingly doesn't make a ton of sense because the risk is there, but the reward definitely isn't. And piggybacking off of that, I want to go with the human aspect of this in that most of us aren't experts in any particular field. The fact that YouTube has a bunch of free videos is going to introduce the fact that you're going to have very human people talking about their experiences, which might not be the same experiences as you. And sometimes there's that mismatch and you might interpret that as somebody pulling the wool over your eyes. But I don't actually think that's true either. I think for the vast majority of us, and from talking to different creators and also being in this market myself, the only thing that I could offer to you is my experience as things happen, when things happen, and as I'm telling them to you. Now, sometimes part of that might be a genuine mistake, and sometimes I catch it and I leave it in the pinned comments, or sometimes you guys make me aware of it and I just acknowledge it and then I move on. But on this platform where there's videos of people putting hours into putting completely free information to help others, there's going to be a human aspect and there's going to be some user error. And I think that's something that actually doesn't make the platform worse, but I actually think it makes them a lot better. If you guys want to have an expert on gear, camera gear, lenses and stuff like that, you're probably going to have to pay an individual to do that. However, there is a ton of information. I do encourage watching as many creators as you can and as you want to, and then making a decision off of a bulk of information rather than the account of only one person. We do that with pretty much anything when studying certain facts or looking at something like buying a home. So if I was to offer any encouragement or any kind of next steps, I would say continue to watch content, but if someone doesn't have something that aligns with your use case, you might want to watch more than one video. I also don't necessarily think there needs to be a qualification on who can talk about camera gear. 2 + 2 is 2 + 2, and you don't necessarily need Einstein to tell you that. For the most part, most people are just looking for a first-hand account to help them with their buying decision. And if you wiped out everybody on YouTube that did reviews, you might actually spend more money because you're actually not sure what something actually does. And a first-hand experience as someone who uses a camera, even for a little bit, might help you more than, unfortunately, that retail worker that kind of doesn't really care whether you buy the thing or you don't. No disrespect. Also, gatekeeping who can do reviews and who can't do reviews actually defeats the purpose of a lot of filmmakers and people in video production coming to the platform in the first place. Now, I can only speak for myself, but I came to here to avoid the gatekeep of the commercial industry because I don't necessarily know everybody. I don't rub shoulders with everybody that's going to put me on to the next project, and I wanted to actually take control of my own destiny, which is kind of why I came here in the first place. And to come from one platform that had a lot of gatekeeping to actually go to another platform where the gatekeeping's from people that are totally anonymous, it just doesn't sit well with me. So the only thing I could say is that you either have to accept all the creators, the good and the bad, and help discern for yourself, or you vote for none of them, and I don't think that's going to help anybody. Now, all that to be said, I hope I gave some new perspective, or at least a little bit of insight on how product placement in content and product placement in film and television work, and the fact that they're all pretty similar, but we do celebrate one and we demonize the other. Now, that still comes to the question of whether or not I'm a sellout for actually doing brand deals and having mid-rolls and dedicated videos. I'm not actually too sure about that answer, and I'm sure someone's gonna leave that down below. But I will tell you that this video is sponsored by